Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claudia from BC, hosting for Canada's podcast. And today I have my first guest that I'm so amazed for having her with us today. She's Victoria Taylor. She's an amazing, has a powerful story. And Victoria, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy we could have this call, Claudia.
You just introduced yourself, but also I wanted you to explain about your story, how you started, how was everything to become this content marketing consultant.
Okay, I would. The best place to start would probably be the original story. So, like I said, I'm a Caribbean girl, right? So, I was born and raised in Jamaica all of my life. It's just an island of sunshine. And originally, I was trying to figure out what is it that I want to do, because I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. Like even in high school, right, when I needed extra cash, like we don't have allowances in Jamaica. It's either you just have the money that you need to go to school and to come back home. So in order for me to kind of make something extra, I would buy candy at the supermarket, go to the high school, and then I would sell that candy to other people. And at one point, I even got my math teacher involved because I realized most people fall asleep during math time. And so I was like, okay, maybe a little sugar high will get people focused. And in a weird kind of way, my math teachers were like, this is a good idea. And so they were actually some of my biggest promoters when it came to me like selling candy in math class. So I just say that to say, like, I've always had like a very entrepreneurial spirit, of very much like, how do I fix this? How do I go about, doing this? And so I kind of transitioned into starting to study engineering. My mother is an engineer. She's one of the leading women in her field there. And so I was like, okay, the pressure's on. Let me start to decide what I want to do with my life, where I want to go. And so I studied engineering. I was really good at it, but there was really no passion for it, or there wasn't really much space for that entrepreneurial spirit that I had inside me. And so after I had finished studying, I was wondering, okay, what's the next step? Because I know that this isn't something that I want to do. I might be good at it, but it doesn't really connect with me. And so I started working remotely for an architecture company in LA. And one day they were like, hey, we need someone to help with marketing. And I was like, that sounds interesting. And so I started helping them. And it was kind of like that light bulb moment that like, oh my gosh, I think this is something that I want to do like for the rest of my life. And so I started to fall in love with marketing. But I knew I didn't want to go back to school. I don't know. I have nothing against school. I'm just more of like a practical learner. I learn from doing rather than kind of like sitting down and reading through books. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to be self-taught. But what came with being self-taught is that you have to actually be really good. So I had to test, I had to fail, I had to try so many new things. And eventually me kind of putting myself out there on social media, being really active, that attracted the eyes of a few agencies that I worked with, and I started working with them. But then eventually, as I was working with the agencies, as I was working with my clients, I started to branch out with companies that were in the US and in Canada, which then led to me traveling to Canada, traveling to the US. And between the two, I really enjoyed Canada. I just felt like it was just I had the luxury of going to Vancouver, metro downtown, but then also being in Richmond, where it's very suburbs, very woodsy. And so I liked that kind of balance. It wasn't too hustle and bustle, just the right amount. And I was like, I'm going to move here. And so moving here also meant I would have to start from scratch. So that meant a lot of clients that I had in Jamaica that I had to be in person with, I had to let them go. And then I had to transition more of my focus to my clients that were in North America. And so that journey for me was, it was a little bit scary because you're starting over. No matter what age, it's always a little bit scary. But it's been really good so far. And then that was kind of like a snippet of like my origin story to like how I'm there, like a very hydrant style.
Yeah, I would ask that. How was like the main challenges you faced when you see the differences, like as you're saying about Jamaica, also the US, the places we've been through until we got to Vancouver? That was like 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, 3 years ago. So I would definitely say the culture and the way things work. So in Jamaica, if you want to find a client, usually the best way to do that is to go out for drinks. So business doesn't happen at marketing conferences or networking events. It happens at just very casual places. So I could be in a cafe or I could be up for drinks at a really nice place. And it's more conversational. So in Jamaica, people are more invested in like, can I vibe with you? Like, if I can vibe with you, I can work with you. And then we'll go from there. Whereas in Canada, I find it's, can I work with you? And regardless if I like you or not. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, I can kind of vibe with you. So the disconnect between the two was a bit of a culture shock for me. And also, I come from an environment where people will just talk to you. They don't need to know you. They don't need to have a connection to you. Like, we're very warm people, right? We'll share a joke, we'll share a laugh. In Canada, it's a little bit more like people have to know you before they can kind of open up their shell. So the way that I would approach clients in Jamaica is a lot different than the way that I would approach it here in Canada. So in Canada, it's very much networking events. It's very much, what can you offer me? What is the value? What's the immediate value proposition that you have to offer? And so it's like being quick on your feet, being ready to hit the ground running, and then cultivating a more personal, professional relationship with the person that you work with afterwards. That's been my experience.
Yeah. And at the same time, do you think that was also your strength? Because we see nowadays when you talk about marketing, digital marketing, a lot of like they have the brand voice and be authentic. And I feel like when you're saying and explaining about your story, you can also use all of this in your favor in order to develop your career as an entrepreneur. That makes sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think being able to navigate through those two cultures is also something that I kind of had to work with. But coming from a culture where being bold is kind of rewarded is in my favor here in Canada, right? Because it's very surprising to a lot of people. And it also helps to kind of instantly show that person like, hey, I have the personality to back the work and the effort that I have in there as well.
Stay ahead of the game with our expert tips and strategies that will help your business thrive in a digital era. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
That's amazing. And I would ask you also, how is routine like as a self thought? Like you thought yourself the most thing you know, but also this career when you have to do your agenda, organize your things. How do you organize it? How is your routine for our listeners to get to know more about it, you, and how they can get these tips from you to organize theirs as well?
Oh yeah, 100%. So I am someone who is still at the stage of learning discipline. Like every entrepreneur, we know we need it, but it's still a challenge. But my calendar is really important to me. My friends always joke about this. If it's not in the calendar, Victoria is not going to remember it. So I put everything in the calendar, not just my work activities, but my personal activities. And this allows me to be like, can I realistically spend this amount of time on a project? Or if I'm going to say that I'm going to spend time with someone, I can't simply just put 30 minutes or an hour. I have to be realistic. So realistically mapping on my calendar, making sure that I have personal and professional both in there. So there's a balance, right? And also waking up really early. So I love to start my work at 7 a.m. I wake up early to have personal time before I start jumping into work. This allows me to kind of like center myself. That for me personally includes like prayer and devotion, gratitude. And then once I've got that done, drink a glass of water to hydrate. And then I create my to-do list the night before so that I'm already entering the day knowing these are the 3 things. And I try not to go past 3. These are the 3 major things that have to be done today. Anything else, it can be pushed over to the next day, but I always have my big 3. I try not to overcomplicate things, have too many habits, or jam pack my schedule too much. If I do, I always call for support and I'm like, does this make sense? I have kind of like other entrepreneurs that I kind of talk like, how do you manage this? And how do you navigate going to the gym while also being a founder? And so asking for advice from other people who are in the thick of it with you and being honest and authentic with them gives you the advice that you need to kind of make the flexibility with your schedule as well.
And you were always like this, or something that you developed through your career as you see now is crucial for you as being an entrepreneur?
I think because I was a self-taught marketer and because I started out in entrepreneurship, I had to be that way. So it started out as a necessary evil, and now it's become something that I rely on to keep me balanced. Of course, there are a couple of things that I got wrong along the way. One of the things that I wish I started earlier was therapy. I wish I had started therapy earlier in my entrepreneurial journey because it would have made me feel what's the word? Process my emotions a lot better. Because sometimes when it's just you and you're a team of one, or even if you're leading a team, sometimes your personal problems become your business problems. Sometimes the way that you internalize information or even give information is based on things that you have to deal with within yourself. And so having good mental hygiene is really good when you're an entrepreneur. So doing therapy, having someone to vocalize these things, who's objective and who's going to navigate you through that, so that whenever you're by yourself, or how you treat other people is reflecting the good that you want to do, not just through your work, but as a person.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like nowadays the industry, it's always telling us to focus on our hard skills and self-development instead of focus sometimes in our soft skills and our self-knowledge, right?
Exactly. I agree.
And you're saying about the failures and the things that you face. Do you have something on your mind while you're telling about your story that you remember that you wish you did differently? Or if you have like a mentor or someone that would tell you, oh, Victoria, you should go this way. You should do this instead of that.
Oh, yeah. I think three things come to mind. One is I always thought that I had to have a mentor at every single stage of life. And in a perfect world, you should, but that's not always the case, right? Someone reminded me, people come into your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And based on who that person is, that person can teach you along the way. And if you don't have a mentor, because there will be seasons where you may not have a mentor, or your mentor may not be able to help you, books have been one of the best mentors for me, right? So consistently consuming the ideas of others in a book. Someone said, if you want to hide a really good idea, you put it in a book. And that's always true. And the second thing would be, once you do have the opportunity to get a mentor, be very honest about, be respectful of their time, of course, but be very honest about what you need help with. If you're coming in trying to be like shiny and polished, you're not going to get the expertise that you need. And so I found really good mentors that I could be very vulnerable and open with. And they were like, I totally understand what you're going through. This is what you need to do. And that's been one of my greatest gifts. And also the third is sometimes you also can be your own mentor. So picking up practices like making sure that you're good self-talk, journaling, taking out time to sit down with yourself and really asking, like, what does Victoria need right now? Is this going to benefit Victoria? Do we need to step back or do we need to push harder? And having that healthy conversation. And therapy helps you to get to that point where you can be have enough trust with yourself to mentor yourself through things. So those would be my three things: books, being honest with your mentors when you do have them, and also mentoring yourself through situations.
Oh, is there any book that you're reading now, or one that was like really good for you that you read before? You have to send to us.
Oh, yes. There's actually a book that I really liked. It's called Herding Tigers. And it's a book about how to work with creatives, because they say that working with creatives is like herding cats. But the author thought cats was like, no, creatives are tigers. So you're herding tigers, which I feel is like a little bit more dangerous, but sometimes it can be. And it has really good, valuable soft skills and hard skills that you can use, because creatives think in a different way than other people, and they are artists in a sense. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs also have a very, very strong creative spirit, even whether they're in tech, whether they're in fashion, they all have that. And so navigating through a team and also individual creatives, I think that's a really good book.
Amazing. Thank you. As you said about mentorship, I see on Instagram, you're always sharing as well, like your story for female leadership entrepreneurs. Also give them all the tips you have, but also I feel like it's important you saying about your background, because you're saying about where you come from, Jamaica, you have like this equity gender when it comes to women. And just say, of course, about your mom as well, like she has this being pioneer in everything. But
Yeah.
also, you work with tech companies that it's male dominate somehow. So how do you balance this both worlds?
Oh yeah, both worlds. I think growing up with a mother who has a very strong spirit. And so growing up, when I would enter a room, of course, I'd feel a little bit scared, but seeing that example of somebody who's so bold, she was in construction engineering. She was in a heavily male dominated area, and the way that she would command a room. And so I kind of learned, like, you have to just go in knowing that you're good enough. And the only way that you'll kind of fail is if you start to think of yourself like, oh my God, I'm the only woman there. I'm the only X. But if you go in there like, I'm the only woman there, I have a unique perspective. I have something to say. I have something that they're not going to see, because as women, we have a way of looking at things that's totally different from men that makes us, unique. And when those two perspectives come together, something great can happen. And so I always try to remind, especially my female friends, like, just have confidence. Like, I know it sounds easier than it is, but even just like, for example, I have friends who are like looking for jobs and they're like, oh, like out of 10, I only have 8. And I'm like, that's perfect. Go for it. Because when I talk to my guy friends, they're like, I have 3 out of 10 of these things. I'm going to apply for this job. And it's like, that's just have the type of confidence, just knowing like no matter what happens, the worst thing that can happen is if you just don't do anything. That's usually my go-to motto. And so I try to remind, like, even my female friends, you do have, like, once you are a subject matter expert, you do have enough to go into that room to talk how you're going, and just know that as long as you are a master of your craft, or you're mastering your craft, you have enough right to be in that room as much as anyone else.
And did you notice the difference when you moved to Vancouver as well when it comes to this context?
I think it's the same even in Vancouver when it comes to tech. Tech is overall just very heavily male dominated, but I personally see that there are a lot more women who are bolder in the space. And I use the word bolder because they've always been there, right? But they're just more bolder in the space, more creative. They're more initiatives. They're creating the initiatives that they want to see happen for them. And I think that's the biggest thing. And for me, I don't want to focus on like, oh, tech is so male dominated. I want my focus to be like, how can I build a community of females who are already in tech to go towards that? So less on the problem and more on how I can be the solution to that.
Perfect. And that's exactly what you're saying about this mentorship guidance and how you use your social personal account to make this women that want to be in the field and also work with, like nowadays we can produce our own content in our own social, how you can provide them some tips, some advice for them to use this in their advantage.
Exactly. Yes, 100%.
And how do you use this on your daily basis? Like providing these tips as an entrepreneur and also balance with your agenda, with your clients, because you have big clients, right?
Yeah, I have a few clients. So the balance really comes in. I try to organize and limit my social engagement because it can be so distracting. Like it's easy to just like, I'm just going to go in for this, and you'll end up like keep scrolling. So exactly. So I try to like 30 minutes in the morning or an hour in the morning, at lunch, and then at night. So I have 3 blocks of time that I kind of set aside to go on my social. And so one is connecting, networking with people. LinkedIn is a platform I've gotten really active on. It's been really great. So I've been connecting with other women who are in marketing, who are in tech. And I get to see the information or the tips or the advice that they have to share. And also I shared my advice and my tips with others as well. So it's this very nice form of exchanging ideas and building on things and learning from each other. And if you are missing that, especially as a woman, whether you're in marketing, tech, or whatever it may be, I think going on LinkedIn and really creating that community for yourself, or even on any social media platform, creating that creating that community and being intentional about how you want the algorithm to feed and find you those people, that really helps, because now you're going into your social media platform knowing that you can offer something and there's somebody that's like you that's offering back just as much value.
Oh, that's a great advice. I feel like when you're saying that's one more thing that you have to have discipline, because as you're saying, it's easy for you to spend like 2 hours, 3 hours scrolling down your feed. And then that's like what I did during this time, right?
Yeah, 100%. It always, and it catches you off, like it's very sneaky. So you don't know until it actually happens.
Yeah, and also like in using your in a smart way, your own social for also get some inspirations for producing your own content or to deliver for your clients as well. Because I feel like
Exactly.
digital marketing is something that it never stops. Like even though we have these strategies, like the algorithm is always changing, so I have to be like doing these researches all the time.
Exactly. You have to kind of be on top of it, but you also want to find a balance that you don't feel overwhelmed or burnt out by so much information all at once.
Um, there was like any kind of tip that you want to say to our listeners while you're explaining that you think like, oh my God, if I would know this previously, I would have make this fail. I don't like to say failure because I think we're always learning, but something that would like make saving your time and money.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think it might be probably a little bit of underwhelming advice, but don't overcomplicate things. That is one of my biggest mottos when it comes to marketing, when it comes to strategy, when it comes to execution, when it comes to A/B testing, or even working with a client and making sure that the onboarding is good. Don't overcomplicate things. Make it as simple as possible. When you start overcomplicating things, then it kind of opens the door for more failure, mistakes, and also you kind of miss the mark on things. But when you have things very simple, you'll be able to easily measure. Okay, so we went from A to B, but we skipped a couple things. Let's go back here. Let's go here. And so keeping things as simple as possible. When you have multiple audiences to reach, right? Narrow it down to a primary ICP, individual customer persona, secondary, tertiary. It gives you more focus. When you have so many social media platforms, narrow it down to at least 3 that you know are going to give you the best. When you have so many marketing ideas, narrow it down to 3 or 1 of the biggest ideas that are going to give you the most results. So keeping it simple, not overcomplicating things. That would be something I would tell entrepreneurs as well, because it can be easy to have these big ideas and start to feel like everything is so complex, but don't overcomplicate it. Make it as simple as possible so that you stick to what you need to do to get the results that you want to see.
Canada's podcast is your gateway to success in the world of entrepreneurship. Start listening today. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
Yeah, sometimes better done than perfect, right?
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're always thinking and brainstorming when you say like, oh, I did nothing with that.
Exactly. Sometimes done is better than perfect. And that's what A/B tests are for. That's what I always say.
You were saying about therapy, and I think that's amazing advice as well. For as I'm saying, like as you introduce yourself when you first started the episode, like you are a person, right?
Yeah.
Regardless being this amazing professional, you are a person. You have feelings, and I want you like to tell how do you face when you have fears or doubts? How do you feel faced like that in order to take this as a power as well for yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of my top things is just making sure that you have a community of real people around you. I mean, social media is great, but you want someone that you can kind of pick up the phone and call or text so having an accountability partner group. For me, I have an accountability group of entrepreneurial women that I'm close to. And so when I'm kind of going through an issue, it's a safe space for me to share that information without it being used against me or without worrying about competition. I'm going in there to talk, to be honest, and to kind of connect. And so having a real community of people. So someone once said that your net worth is equal to your network, which is so true. So working on building not just professional relationships, but a community of entrepreneurs, you can really be like, hey, I don't think I'm doing really well. I'd really love some help. Or I'm kind of struggling with this thought, or I'm feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome. Help me navigate through that. That's extremely helpful because entrepreneurs, we face so much. There's no, there's no solid survival guide for entrepreneurs. We kind of just have to figure it out. And with so many things changing with AI, with marketing, with sales, with even just people like Gen Z coming up as the new primary consumers, like there's so many things that you have to keep up with. Having a solid group of entrepreneurs that you can kind of talk to helps to keep you grounded.
Oh, thank you. That's a great advice. I want you to say how do you see your business in the next 3-5 years? You have this goals that you already have written down?
I have a couple of ambitious goals written down. For now, it's just me and a small team. But in the next 5 years, I'd really love to see an agency in the making that has just a large group of people taking over Canada, helping them to do the best content marketing that they can do. Yeah.
And you still see this person that likes advocate for equity, gender, or all this business and tech?
Yeah, 100%. And there are also a lot more male-owned tech companies that are very interested in hiring females, in not just the usual managerial positions, but in important managerial positions like a product marketer, a developer, designer. And so there's a change that's happening. And I think the more that we genuinely support each other, genuinely help to build each other up, like even just recommending a fellow friend and sending them the position or referring them to someone they're going to be a good asset to, that those are the small but effective ways that you can build that.
Yeah, that's amazing, because we have to say, right? We women, we see things differently. We see it from different perspective. We have this other way, to be more taking care, the way you organize things. So I feel like the companies now acknowledge how women can do things differently and sometimes even more effective.
Exactly. And we also, as women, have a tendency to future think as well.
Completion.
Exactly. Preparation. A lot of guys are kind of big picture. Women are like the deep, minute details and then the next step after. And again, those two perspectives together are actually they work really well. But when we just work on one and leave the other, it leaves so much room for wanting.
Right. And I think nowadays, the content creator thing, as you do amazingly on your job, and digital marketing, you see this is also the business of the future as well. Everybody has to be on social nowadays. You have to show your work, not do what you do, but also spread out to the world how you're doing your things.
100%, because that is not only how you build your business, but also how you land jobs. A lot of founders and VCs, venture capitalists, are waking up to the fact that simply just having money, having the business is not enough. You need to have a brand. People need to know you and connect with you. So it's very, very important. And as an entrepreneur, I know we have 5 million things to do at once, but you have to carve out time to really build your brand on an online platform, even if it's just one solid way to just build your platform, because it's needed, because people don't buy products, they invest in people.
That's amazing. Before we warm up, I want you to say how people can find you. Can you say about your website, your social?
Yeah, sure. So you can easily find me on my website, www.victoriataylormarketing.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. LinkedIn's my most active right now, as well as my website. So feel free to say hi, reach out, and let me know if you have any questions on anything content marketing.
Victoria, thank you again for having us. I'm so amazed by your story, how inspiring you are. For me, it's really important as my first guest, being a woman like you, your story. I love how you see things, how you're doing your job. I'm already following you and see how you manage your lifestyle, and also give these tips. I think this is really important nowadays. And I want to say thank you for all your job. And I hope I can see you again and talk more about your business and share your victories and accomplishments, not just in Canada's podcast, but around the world.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And you too, you've been an amazing host.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having us. And you can also follow us in all our channels and Canada's podcast, the #1 podcast for entrepreneurs around Canada.